Keeping with the
Yeah.
theme of COVID and moving on into sort of realm of international relations, the United States still being sort of shut off internationally. US citizens can't travel to many places, and with COVID being more active in the United States and in most countries, whether it's in Europe or in China, do you think that makes Trump look like a weaker leader on the global stage?
No, I don't think so. I think that the fact that you just had a historic agreement between the United Arab Emirates and Israel means that we look even stronger when we don't see as many threats coming from Islamic terrorism or Russia or China or North Korea. I think that we have a strong foreign policy here in the United States of America. We don't have a policy of leading from behind anymore. We don't have a policy of acquiescing and compromising. We definitely don't have a foreign policy of sending millions, maybe even billions of dollars to the number one state sponsor of Islamic terrorism, which was Iran.
So, do you not think that there's a risk with China, particularly in Africa, emerging now as the global leader?
Of course, there's a risk. I've read the Belt and Road strategy, but to this point, Republican or Democrat, we have not seen a president take a strong stance against China as President Trump has done. So I think you have to credit him for that.
So you talked about the Iran deal. One of the main criticisms from sort of our Prime Minister Boris Johnson was not so much the fact that he pulled out of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, but that he sort of hasn't put forward a sort of Trump deal to replace that. Do you feel that the administration is doing?
Well, I don't know why we need to replace a deal with Iran. Like I said, they're the number one state sponsor of Islamic terrorism. And I think that the killing of General Soleimani, who was violating United Nations standing orders by being outside of Iran, being in Iraq and coordinating attacks against Americans, I think that sent a huge message to Iran as well. We need to keep the pressure on Iran. And I think that you're seeing, because of the fact that they are not getting all of this revenue that we were sending them, Hezbollah is suffering because of that, and many of the other activities that Iran is doing was suffering. So first and foremost, the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, was not a ratified treaty. As a matter of fact, it was something that was done unilaterally by President Obama. And once again, the Senate Democrats were the ones that filibustered it in the United States Senate. So it never got to see the light of day to be approved and ratified as it should have been by our Constitution and our rule of law. So there was never really an agreement between the United States of America and Iran. There was an agreement between the Obama administration and Iran. And with the changeover, peaceful transition to a new administration, President Trump had every right to take the course of action that he did.
But surely you'd like to try and prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. Is Trump doing enough to?
I don't think I don't think the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was doing anything to prevent Iran. What it was doing was preventing its breakout time. I think within the 10 to 15 years, Iran would still be able to develop that capability and capacity. That's what the JCPOA did. So it tried to reduce or extend the breakout time, but it did not prevent Iran from developing a nuclear device.
Okay, so moving now on to the withdrawal of troops from Syria. That was a campaign pledge. Do you think President Trump did sort of enough to protect the Kurds who commander of US forces in Syria said were instrumental in the defeat of ISIS, 11,000 casualties? Has Trump, because to many it seems that Trump has almost sort of ruined the Western reputation with the Kurds in the sense that he sort of just abandoned them. Do you agree with that? I suppose you don't, but
No, I don't think the reputation with the Kurds has been ruined. I mean, it was strained somewhat, but not ruined. There were previous administrations that did, much more damage to the relationship with the Kurds. I think that we still have a strike operations capability that can be deployed and employed there in the Iraqi theater of operations, and hopefully the president will do the exact same thing in the Afghanistan theater of operations. I can understand the president about bringing troops home and not wanting to have these long, drawn-out deployments. But as a 22-year career military officer who served in Iraq, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and also over in Afghanistan, it's very important that we do keep a presence and maintain a presence so that we don't allow a resurgence of those enemy forces. And I think right now, you don't hear about ISIS, you don't hear about as much chaos and turmoil and violence as you could, because again, I think that the United States is trusted as far as its word, and our yes means a yes and our no means a no. But I think the most important threat that we definitely need to make sure that we're keeping an eye on over there is Turkey. Mr. Erdogan is not exactly what I call a friend to Western civilization and Western democratic processes. I think that he is trying to restore that Turkish caliphate that we remember from history.
And just as a sort of last on that, Secretary of State Affairs, both Jim Mattis, former Defence Secretary, and John Bolton, former NSA advisor, National Security Advisor, have both sort of publicly criticised Trump and attacked foreign policy and said that he's not a sort of stable personality in the White House. Would you refute that?
Well, I haven't been in the White House with President Trump on a day-to-day basis, but I will tell you this, that I was his congressional representative when I was in Congress down in Florida. And so, from what I saw, he was a person that, I could have a good conversation with, policy and things of this nature. But I'm not going to comment on what Secretary Mattis or John Bolton has said, but I think that some of their comments may be a little bit politicized, but that's okay.